I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Laura Ruderman, the Chief Executive Officer of the Technology Alliance. A few notes about Laura. She is, the Technology Alliance is a statewide nonprofit organization of leaders from Washington's technology-based businesses and research institutions that are united by a vision of a vibrant, innovative economy that benefits all of Washington's citizens. Prior to joining the Tech Alliance in 2019, she served as the interim PAC Director for the Children's Campaign Fund. She also represented the 45th District in the State House of Representatives, where she served as the Vice Chair of the Technology, Telecommunications, and Energy Committee, and was elected as the Vice Chair of her party's caucus. She held a variety of positions at Microsoft and has been a fundraising professional for a wide range of nonprofit organizations. And she served on boards of organizations ranging from the King County Library System Foundation to Ventures, a Seattle-based nonprofit that empowers aspiring entrepreneurs. Without further ado, please welcome Laura.
All right, thank you. So before I begin my prepared remarks, I just want to say to the previous speaker where you talked about not being able to separate transportation and the iPhone, I'm assuming that everybody in this room has seen the video of the performance artist who created a traffic jam on Google Maps by taking a red wagon filled with cell phones and walking it slowly down a street. Right? Because Google Maps senses traffic by getting phone data and how many phones and how fast are they moving. So if you take a little red wagon filled with, I don't know, I think he had 150 phones, and you can watch on Google Maps. Anyway, nobody's laughing except the one guy who's seen it, but if you have not, everybody should go to this guy over here and have him send you the link because I think it would be very informative for the people in this room. So I'm going to really try hard not to spill my coffee. Thank you so much for having me here today. When I told my sister yesterday that I was giving the keynote speech at a conference that was all about transportation infrastructure and developing data-driven solutions for transportation needs from sustainability to safety, she said, in the way that only big sisters can, but you don't know about any of that. And she said, owning a Tesla doesn't count because you don't even drive that. And then I told her we did not spring for the self-driving package because the only autopilot my pilot husband will trust is the one in the airplane. He doesn't even like it when I use cruise control. So, but then I told her that I was asked to talk about innovation and what it takes to make a region an innovation hub. And she said, oh, well, that you do know about. And after almost 30 years of occupying a variety of roles in the innovation economy in Washington State, I hope I do, and I hope that you find some of that to be valuable today. So let me tell you a little bit about the Technology Alliance. We were founded a little over 25 years ago by folks like Bill Gates Sr., Tom Alberg, Ed Fritzke, John Stanton, and the leaders of the trade associations for software manufacturers, hardware manufacturers, and the life sciences. They looked around and said, you know, we think this tech economy thing is going to be a thing. And we should position Washington State to be a hub of the innovation economy. And back then, this was 96, 97, it wasn't as clear as it is today that we could get there. It was a very different time. I see some of you in the room have enough gray hair like me to remember that time. I'm not sure your parents remember that time, but I'm just not going to think about that right now. Back then, the Washington State economy was built on three things: agriculture, airplanes, which was really seen as more of a manufacturing play than innovation, and I really hope now that there's no one from Boeing in the room. And oh my God, what are we gonna do about the timber and fishing industries in the wake of the spotted owl listing? And the innovation economy looked different too, right? We had some good-sized life sciences companies, and Microsoft was fairly well known. Windows 95 had brought email to the masses, and many of us wondered why there was strings of Miatas driving across 520. But Amazon had only just started selling books only. Google wasn't yet a company, and Mark Zuckerberg was in middle school. Most websites will tell you that clean tech was not a term really that was used until 2002, although Merriam-Webster says that the first use of the word was in 1985. So when you look at where the innovation economy was, and you look at where the Washington State economy was, these folks are a little, you can see that these folks were a little bit more forward thinking than it might now appear with the benefit of hindsight. My story is somewhat interwoven with the technology alliances as well. Just before this, in 1993, I had landed entirely by accident, but that is a story for a different day, at Microsoft as an administrative assistant. By the time the Technology Alliance was a dream in Bill Sr.'s eye, I had taught myself HTML, back when we still wrote it in Notepad, and was working as a program manager in the Windows NT group. And that seriously dates me for some of you in the room. So the big question at this point for Bill and Tom and company was, what does it take to be a hub of the innovation economy? To explore that, they went to places that at that point were ahead of us in this realm: Silicon Valley, Boston, Research Triangle, and they settled on three things, what we call the three pillars of the Technology Alliance and the three pillars of an innovation economy. An educated workforce, which we really define as pre-K through PhDs, research capacity, and an entrepreneurial climate. That last is the most amorphous, but for us, it is generally expressed most often as access to capital. They also realized that it was going to take a conscious collaboration among the research institutions, the business community, and elected officials. Why elected officials? Because so much of how we increase our educated workforce and we increase our research capacity, both of which help drive the entrepreneurial climate, relies on public policy. And why the business community? Because if you are going to create a group of champions for an innovation-driven economic development agenda inside the state legislature, if you're going to create a consensus for anything inside the state legislature, you need to create champions and you need to create a community that is supporting that outside of the state legislature. So at a very high level, the technology exists to bring together those three communities, the elected officials, the business community, and the research institutions, to work on issues having to do with creating an educated workforce, increasing research capacity, and strengthening the entrepreneurial climate. But what does that mean? At this point, my husband always kicks me and says, okay, but what do you do? Like, that's cool, but what do you do? And why those three pillars? So educated workforce probably needs no explanation, when it comes to, about why that's important and what that means. When it comes to an educated workforce, we've done a variety of things, from an early postcard campaign to the State Board of Education to advocate for increasing math and science standards for graduation, to an early 2000s program that sent virtually every high school principal, public high school principal, and school district superintendent through a 4-day residential program that helped them understand how and why to effectively incorporate technology into the classroom. Again, that seems very dated. When the organization first embarked on creating this program, it arose from the question, well, how many computers are there in schools, in public schools in Washington State? So we asked OSPI. And the answer was, we don't know. And so how did we find out? The organization sent emails to generally the school secretary, right, generally a woman, who would then, again, you have to think about the time, print out the email, deliver it to the desk of the principal, who might not have a computer. They would write the answer, and the school secretary would then come and email the answer back to us. This is the way things used to happen, right? So the prize, the carrot at the end of the lure for attending this program was that you'd walk away with a laptop with Microsoft Office on it. So again, some of you in the room understand how long we've been around. More recently, we convened a task force on what Washington State public schools should be doing now to prepare for the next extended school shutdown, and helped the UW Allen School go a little bit rogue in the state budget to win funding for a significant number of additional slots to increase undergraduate enrollment. One of the next frontiers in this work is to increase the number of kids who go from high school to get some sort of post-secondary credential. Currently, does anybody know where that number is in Washington State right now? Anyone have a guess? How many Washington State kids within a year or two go from high school to get some sort of post-secondary credential? Oh, you're a real pessimist. It's a little higher than that. It's 50%. It's about 50%, but that puts us in the bottom 5 states in the nation. Kids from Alabama, Georgia, any other state we do not want to be compared to. Somebody's listening. Is there anybody from Alabama or Georgia in the room? Oh, one person, okay. Well, congratulations on sending more of your kids to college than we do. But that puts us in the bottom 5 states in the nation. So I'm hoping the 3 of you who so bravely identified yourself as high school students are planning to do something after high school and will help your peers figure out that there are so many options and so many reasons, and that they will not incur hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, because that is not what happens in our state with undergraduate enrollment. We are actually one of the lowest states in the nation and have one of the most generous financial aid packages of any state in the nation, and yet we still can't get our kids to go do anything after college. Probably tell this is one of my pet passions. Under the heading of research capacity, one of our early wins was to change the compensation rules for professors to keep them from leaving academia entirely for private industry. The poster child for that effort was Lee Hood, who here at the University of Washington, and that's also another point where my story intersects with the technology alliances. By that time, I'd gotten elected to the legislature. I was 27 when I got elected, and because professors are state employees, in order to change those compensation rules, it required legislation, and I was one of the key drivers in that. We also continue today to sponsor the Discovery Series, which is our monthly showcase of cutting-edge research being done at Washington State's nonprofit research institutions across all scientific fields. Last month, we heard about how a breakthrough in yeast genetics at the Pacific Northwest Research Institute is going to lead to the ability to test newborns at scale for the first time for a number of genetic diseases which, if caught early, are easily treatable, but generally are not discovered until the worst has happened. When I'm done here, I can't stay with you for the day. When I'm done here, I'm headed downtown for this month's event, which is about work being done at WSU on sustainable aviation fuels. So we do this because we want to keep reminding elected officials and the broader business community of 2 things. Not all the cutting-edge research in the country happens at MIT and Stanford. Although, if you simply read the public press, you might get that impression. And private companies can't pick up all the slack. There is basic research that needs to be supported, as you all well know, by government at all levels. I think the public doesn't understand the degree to which the basic research needs to be publicly supported so that then it can be transferred to private industries, commercialized, which I know is a lot about what you all are talking about here. And we need to constantly be reminding people that, you know, Microsoft and Google can't do all of the research. Entrepreneurial climate is the most amorphous of these categories, and it's typically, as I said, defined at our organization as access to capital. Early on, our organization started the Alliance of Angels to build a strong angel investing community. We've provided pitch training at our innovation showcase. And more recently, we identified the lack of corporate venture investment in Washington state startups as a significant hole in our ecosystem and began our Corporate Venture Connection series, essentially a matchmaking service for CVCs, corporate venture capital organizations, and in-state startups. So you probably know that virtually every Fortune 1000 company at this point has a venture investing arm. They're typically very imaginatively named, Toyota Ventures, Honda Ventures, Google Ventures, LG Ventures. Microsoft may win the prize with M12, although nobody knows what that is. So who knows? And I'll come back to that because it is key for the folks in this room. Clearly, this pillar is important because of the economic development that successful startups drive. But it's also important because it helps the big companies in the area attract talent. We hear all the time that people move here, yes, to work at Microsoft and Amazon, but they move here, they want to move to a place where they can make sure that when they're ready to leave, they can go start their own companies. So, have we done it? If Bill Sr. and Tom Alberg and Ed Lazowska created the Technology Alliance to make Washington State a hub of the innovation economy, didn't they succeed? Should we hang a banner, mission accomplished, have a party, go home? Why are we still here? Well, we actually asked the organization asked itself that question in 2018 and decided that there is clearly still work to be done. I came in 2019, and I like to apply a 3-part test to the projects and the programs that we take on. Is there an identifiable problem? Is there an identifiable gap in the ecosystem? Are we, the Technology Alliance, uniquely or at least well-positioned to take it on? And I like potholes analogies. I use a pothole analogy. Do we not have to kick people in the shins to grab their shovels, right? Is everybody working on a problem? Why would we add anything? So encouraging more corporate investment in startups is a perfect example of a program that passed that 3-part test. That said, Washington State is undeniably the cloud capital of the world. According to GeekWire, we rank 2nd in the nation when it comes to AI talent density. We've been a top 10 biopharma hub for at least the last 10 years. We're not too shabby when it comes to aerospace with Blue Origin and SpaceX, as well as major research facilities and startups in the areas of sustainable aviation fuels and electrification. With Helion, Zap, and Avalanche, we have the highest concentration of fusion energies in the world. And if you are listening to KUOW this morning, you will have learned that we have just been named a hydrogen hub by the United States government. So, and I think this is the question, this is why Bart invited me to speak. What is it going to take for the Pacific Northwest to be known as a hotbed of innovation for transportation? One might argue that in some arenas we are, but if not, you certainly have all of the ingredients here: an educated workforce, research capacity, and an entrepreneurial culture. The question might be, are they there in the right amounts? And are the right conversations happening among the important constituencies, the business community, the elected officials, and the research institutions? Because the opportunities are legion, the time is right, and the impact is critical. I would argue that right now, like 1997, when the Technology Alliance was founded primarily around the information and computing technology and life sciences sectors, you are standing on the precipice of an explosion of opportunity in your fields with the advent of ARPA-I. So what does PacTrans need to be doing now to lead in the development of both the technological solutions and the resulting economic explosion? Because make no mistake, whether it's designing for tomorrow's growth, new road materials, enhanced driver and pedestrian safety, traffic reduction, decarbonization, there are venture-backed startups today in all of these areas. And the talent is largely going to follow the money. And if we want to attract the top talent to our region, those startups need to be here. So the opportunity is legion, and the time is right. Transportation is the big frontier in climate change, whether that's better batteries, urban shuttle solutions like Circuit. Has anybody tried Circuit in Bellevue yet? Do people know what it is? Some of you. I'm really excited to try it, so you can look it up later. Whether it's Circuit or hydrogen-powered airplanes or how to have the road charge my car while I'm driving, this is the next frontier, right? And safety is looming large in the public consciousness like never before. And I think that's why you're seeing ARPA-I come into being. As a newly designated agency, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, ARPA-I will fund high-risk, high-reward, next-generation transportation technologies. How great to know this is coming and start asking the right questions now so that PacTrans becomes the leader in spinning out the next Microsofts, Apples, NVIDIAs of the infrastructure world. And the impact is critical. Make no mistake that the work you do here saves lives. I was talking to somebody the other day about sort of what are the barriers to spinning out companies in this field? And they said, well, you know, you can't just start a new materials company with 2 people in your garage. And I said, yeah, but the life sciences people are the same way, right? Like, you need wet lab space. And I think there's a drive there around saving lives. And it occurred to me as I was looking through all your, as I was reading about PacTrans and all the research that you all do, the work you do saves lives too. Whether it's directly through safety improvements or indirectly through decarbonization and other climate change mechanisms, we're all depending on you as much as we're depending on the folks in the biology department to cure cancer. Look, commercialization is hard. It is hard under any circumstances. I was actually talking to someone last night from a life sciences organization talking about SAF and commercialization, and they're like, yeah, well, don't talk about SAF and commercialization because look how long they've been working on that. And I turned to him and I said, well, where's my cure for cancer? Even once you've figured out the science and have a working product, it can take a while. I just read that the founder of Canva suffered more than 100 rejections until one conversation led to another and then another. And at some point, she had to learn to kite surf in order to go to a conference where she could talk to other investors. So this stuff is hard. And that's for a product that you can design in your garage. Complicating matters. I'm not sure how many courses on entrepreneurialism one takes on the way to becoming a professor or a researcher, but you're so fortunate to be housed at the University of Washington, which has a number of researchers to help, a number of resources to help make that jump from research to commercialization, including co-motion. And it is so worth it. So I hope I've inspired you to look at your work a little differently, to widen your aperture, and to imagine where it could go. If you're still unsure about what all of this looks like, or if you are sure and you're looking for funding for your budding startup, it just so happens that on November 14th from 1:30 to 2:30, our next Corporate Venture Connections series is on the topic of transportation and mobility. So now I'm going to say that again so you can take out your pens or your phones and hold the time on your calendar. It's virtual, November 14th from 1:30 to 2:30. We expect to have presentations by Honda Ventures and Toyota Ventures about their investment theses, what kinds of companies they invest in, check size, stage, and then provide meetings for up to 5 startups with each of those companies. That happens at a later time. Honda's interests are simple: zero emissions, a world with zero emissions and zero fatalities. So if you've got tech that can help them achieve either of those goals, they'd like to meet you. Toyota's interests are similar, a little bit broader into factory automation and some robotics. Again, they'd like to meet you if that's the space you play in. You can join us simply for the information for the hour, or if you or someone you know is currently raising a round or will be raising a round soon, please apply for a meeting with one of those companies. So as I said earlier, the opportunities are legion, the time is right, and the impact is critical. We're all out here, those of us who don't do transportation, we're all depending on you to attract the best talent, apply it to the critical problems of the day, and leverage those solutions into companies that can make sure those solutions get as far out into the world as possible, creating a future where truly our transportation infrastructure is safe, secure, equitable, and emissions-free. So thank you for having me. I hope I have imparted anything that you find valuable, and I think Bart promised me that some of you might have questions that I am entirely unequipped to answer, but as a recovering politician will do my best. So thank you very much, and I am happy to take any questions that you might have.